There's a particular kind of frustration that stays with you, not the kind that comes from a bad day or an unfair outcome, the kind that comes from walking out of a moment that mattered, a difficult conversation, an important meeting, a high stakes exchange, knowing you didn't show up the way you're capable of. You replayed it. You knew exactly what you should have said. You felt the gap between the woman you are and the woman who showed up in that room. And you promised yourself it wouldn't happen that way again. Most women approach those moments the same way. They think about what they're going to say, they rehearse their words, they prepare their argument. But what moves people, what creates presence, authority, and or grace under pressure is never just the words. Today, we're going to change how you think about approaching high stakes communication. Welcome back to Gracefully Lori. I'm Lori. If you're new here, this channel is for women who want to live authentically, express themselves with intention, and move through the world with quiet, modern grace. This is the second video in the Graceful Presence series, where we explore the art of creating lasting impressions. Today, we focus on communication, specifically high-stakes moments when how you show up matters deeply, whether personally or professionally. Let's think of it this way. A musician doesn't walk onto a stage and simply play whatever comes to mind. She prepares. She knows her material, her audience, her instrument. And when she performs, she's not just playing notes. She's managing tempo, dynamics, silence, and harmony all at once. High-stakes communication works the same way. Today, we're going to look at 3 elements that separate the women who navigate these moments with grace from the ones who walk away wishing they'd done it differently. Element 1. A musician doesn't sit down to compose the night before a performance. The composition of the material happens long before the stage. By the time she performs, she has studied, prepared, and practiced, so she knows the music, the audience, and the venue by heart. To the onlooker, the performance may seem effortless, but that comes from preparation. High-stakes communication is the same. Most women prepare for difficult conversations and important meetings by thinking about what they're going to say and anticipating arguments. And that preparation has value, but it's also incomplete. Because the women who navigate these moments with the most grace don't just prepare what they say. They prepare everything. The first thing to prepare? Yourself. Before a graceful woman thinks about a single word, she composes herself and she arrives settled. Like the musician, she knows her material. She has done the work before she walks into the room, so she doesn't have to figure it out under pressure. I experienced this firsthand during a high-stakes moment in my early professional life. I was being deposed by an opposing attorney for 7 hours on behalf of my company. I had no control over the timing or the location, but I understood exactly what I was walking into. His goal was to get me to say something imprecise, something that could later be used against us. Knowing that, my preparation revolved mostly around how to think and respond under sustained pressure. That clarity, knowing the objective of the room before you enter it, is one of the most powerful things we sometimes fail to do. The second item to prepare, knowing your audience. Not just who they are, how they think, what they value, what they expect from an exchange like this one. A difficult conversation with a close friend requires emotional attunement. You know this person, their sensitivities, what lands and what doesn't. A professional setting requires a different kind of knowledge. The hierarchy in the room, the cultural context, the unspoken protocols that shape how communication is received. For example, I've sat across the table from foreign delegations with very different cultural norms. Understanding those and adhering to them just aren't formalities. They're communication. Getting these right signals respect before a word of business has been spoken. Getting them wrong signals the opposite. So again, it's important to know your specific audience. The third item to prepare, control the conditions when possible. The timing of a high-stakes conversation matters. A graceful woman may not be the same communicator at the end of an exhausting day as she is at her sharpest. If she has the choice, she claims the advantage. The day, the time, and the location. Being in her own space gives her comfort and familiarity. Someone else's space puts her in the position of guest, which can shift the power dynamic before anything has been said. Neutral grounds level the playing field. In my deposition, I had no control over the logistics, but I controlled what I could. I dressed deliberately, in power colors, fully considered, nothing left to chance. The outfit wasn't about vanity. It was a part of my preparation. How a graceful woman dresses for a high-stakes moment is a decision, not an afterthought. It shapes how she's perceived before she speaks, and it shapes how she feels, which shapes everything that follows. This is the composition, the work done before the performance begins, the preparation that makes what follows look effortless. But preparation only takes her to the door. What happens when she walks through it, how she holds herself, how she speaks, how she commands a room in a conversation, that's where the real performance begins. And it starts before she says a word. Element 2, a musician can know her composition perfectly. Every note, every phrase, every dynamic marking, and still walk onto the stage and lose the room. Because performance isn't just the notes. It's how she carries herself, how she settles before she plays, the authority in her stillness before a single sound is made. The audience is already forming an impression before the music begins. High-stakes communication works exactly the same way. Most women believe communication begins when they speak. It doesn't. It begins the moment they enter the room. And the signals she sends in those first few seconds through how she moves, how she holds herself, how she occupies space are more powerful than most women realize. Research shows that the words we choose are the least influential part of how we're received. Tone carries more weight, body language carries more still. A graceful woman understands this and she uses it. So let's talk about what your master performance actually looks like using 7 techniques. First, she takes up space, not aggressively, but deliberately. She doesn't make herself smaller to seem more accommodating. She doesn't fold inward under pressure. She sits fully in her chair. She stands with quiet authority. She allows herself to be present in the room, not perched at its edges. In my deposition, I was acutely aware of this. After a few hours, I could have shrunk into my chair. Instead, I sat forward, grounded, present. Not combative, composed. Taking up space signals that you belong there. And when you signal that you belong, the room receives you differently. Second, she knows what to do with her hands. Most women, under pressure, reach for something to do with their hands. They play with their hair. They clasp and unclasp. They fidget in ways that signal discomfort, even when their words are confident. A graceful woman, in these moments, lets her hands rest, open, still, and quiet. She uses them to emphasize a point and then lets them go quiet again. A tip: when the pressure builds in a conversation and you need somewhere to put that stress, you can press your hands against the underside of the table where no one can see it. It immediately helps to relieve the tension. Third, her eye contact is deliberate. She holds a direct gaze, not a stare, but a steady, engaged presence. She scans the room when she needs to include others, without letting her eyes dart or drift. And when she makes eye contact, she's the last to look away. Softened always, with a quiet confidence rather than a challenge. When being deposed, having direct eye contact with the attorney across from me was one of the most powerful things I could do. It signaled that I had nothing to hide and that I was not rattled. Fourth, her movement is unhurried. Under pressure, most women speed up. They speak faster. They move faster. They reach for water and drink it quickly. A graceful woman does the opposite. She slows down deliberately. She picks up her glass with intention. She pauses before she responds. The measured pace of her movement communicates something words alone cannot, that she's not being rushed, that she's in control of her own tempo. Fifth, she's aware of the words she uses. Most women carry communication habits that quietly undermine them in high-stakes moments, not because they lack intelligence or preparation, but because no one ever named these habits as problems. Qualifier words, filler phrases, unnecessary apologies. I might be wrong, but this is probably a silly question. Using a word unnecessarily and repeatedly. Common examples include like, seriously, sort of. Each one signals uncertainty before the content has even landed. A graceful woman notices these habits and removes them, not all at once, but deliberately, over time, until her words carry the full weight of what she actually means. Sixth, her tone does as much work as her vocabulary. The most common habit that undermines a woman's authority in high-stakes moments is upward inflection, ending a statement as though it were a question. It signals uncertainty even when the content is confident. A graceful woman ends her statements with a downward inflection, decisive, settled, and she also finds the lower end of her natural vocal range, not artificially, but intentionally. A lower register carries more authority than a higher one, and she uses silence. She pauses before she answers, not because she doesn't know, but because the pause itself signals that her answer will be considered rather than reactive. Seventh, be direct and succinct. In my deposition, I answered the exact question being asked, not what I thought was being asked, not what I assumed he meant, the exact question, succinctly and without elaboration. That discipline, saying precisely what needs to be said and nothing more, is one of the most powerful communication skills a woman can develop. It works in boardrooms, in difficult personal conversations, in moments where a graceful woman needs to be heard clearly and remembered accurately. The full performance, how she holds herself, how she sounds, how she chooses her words, is a complete system, not three separate things. But even the most accomplished performer knows that the performance is only part of what's happening in the room. The other half is what she hears. Element 3. In music, even the most accomplished soloist listens. She hears the acoustics of the room. She adjusts her tempo when the energy shifts. She responds to what's happening around her, not just what's happening inside her. This is what separates a technically proficient communicator from one who truly commands a moment. Most women in high-stakes situations are so focused on their own performance, what they're saying, how they're sitting, whether their voice is steady, that they stop receiving the room entirely. They become so concentrated on output that they forget to input. Listening is not passive. In high-stakes communication, listening is one of the most active and powerful things she can do. It tells her when to press and when to pull back. It reveals what the other person actually needs from the exchange, which is often different from what they're saying. And it signals to everyone in the room that she's present, engaged, and confident enough not to fill every silence with her own voice. She also reads the room, not just the words being spoken, but the energy beneath them, the shift in someone's posture, the moment the dynamic changes. A graceful woman notices these things and adjusts without announcing she's adjusting. She doesn't react. She responds deliberately. And when something goes wrong, because sometimes it does, she recovers the same composure she brought in. She doesn't apologize unnecessarily. She doesn't over-explain. She pauses, reorients, and continues. A graceful recovery isn't the absence of difficulty. It's the presence of composure when difficulty arrives. At the end of the deposition, I had given the attorney nothing to work with. I had listened carefully, answered precisely, and held my composure through every tactic he employed. The case was dismissed. That happened because I was prepared and present. High-stakes communication isn't a skill some women are born with. It's a system. The composition she built ahead of time, the clarity, the knowledge, the conditions she controls, the performance, the space she takes up, the voice she uses, the words she chooses with precision, and the ensemble played in real time, listening, reading, adjusting, recovering with grace. 3 elements, 1 instrument. And when all 3 work together, something shifts. She stops dreading these high-stake moments and starts meeting them. So, if this resonated with you, I'd love to know which element felt most useful, the composition, the performance, or the ensemble. Tell me in the comments. And if you found this valuable, please like the video. It helps other women find it who might need it too. Until next time, my graceful friend.